Hey, welcome back. I'm Aron Bernstein. By now, you've got some solid experience with 1 and 5 chords. These two chords create the authentic cadence. But as you know, most music contains more than just those two chords. So in this video, we're going to introduce 2 and 4, and they're actually going to help lead us to the 5 chord. Let's do this. We've had a close look at the tonic and dominant, 1, 5, and 5, 7. And although these are the two strongest harmonies in tonal music, we're now going to expand our vocabulary to include the 2 chord, or supertonic, and 4, the subdominant. These two chords often serve as a preparation for the 5 chord, and are thus called predominants. Let's hear 1, 2, 5, 1. And here's 1, 4, 5, 1. We'll begin with the 2 chord, the supertonic. How do you like them, bananas? Notice the authentic cadence at the end, 5-7 to 1. But right before that, the music goes to the 2 chord. The reason this progression sounds so inevitable is that the 2 chord is like the 5 chord's own personal dominant. 2 is a fifth above 5, just as 5 is a fifth above 1. This is called a descending fifth sequence. So 2 is a very convincing approach to 5, and actually helps strengthen the 5-1 cadence. Now, before we go bananas with this, let's see some clear-cut uses of the 2 chord. We're in D major. Our 2 chord is an E minor chord. The soprano has the melody, and notice how it goes from Mi down to Re for the 2 chord. So Re, the second note of our scale, is supported well by the 2 chord. Also, the tenor has the third of our 2 chord, G. That's Fa in our scale, and that, of course, becomes one of our tendency tones when we go to the 5-7 chord. The alto has the other tendency tone, T, and they both resolve as they should, T up to Do, Fa down to Mi. Here's another use of the 2 chord. Now we're in F major. Our 2 chord is G minor. This time the soprano's melody starts on So and goes down to Fa for the 2 chord. Fa then, the 4th note of our scale, is also supported well by the 2 chord. And once again, that Fa, B flat, is one of our tendency tones when we get to the 5-7 chord. The tenor has the other tendency tone, T, and you know where they go. So in any melody, it's Re and Fa, the 2nd and 4th notes of the scale, that are best supported by the 2 chord. But to every rule there are exceptions, and for every banana, more than one way to peel. All right, banana time. I've arranged this 1920s song as a 4-part chorale. Notice the soprano with the melody is the most rhythmically active part. Now we begin on a 1 chord, but it's in first inversion, and this is no accident. Watch what happens if we approach the 2 chord from a root position tonic. Notice the bass and soprano move in parallel fifths. This should be avoided, just like parallel octaves. The perfect fifth is a very consonant interval, and 2 voices moving in parallel fifths no longer sound distinct from each other. So, generally speaking, we can add parallel fifths to our list of forbidden motions. At this particular spot, we can avoid parallel fifths between the bass and soprano by approaching our 2 chord from a first inversion 1 chord, with the bass on E. Now the bass moves down to D, the soprano up to A, and we've arrived at this perfect fifth by contrary motion, opposite directions, which is perfectly fine. So be careful when you go from 1 to 2. Parallel fifths will often be a concern. Now you might be looking at the tenor and thinking, wait, the tenor and bass arrive on a perfect fifth, and it's through parallel motion. It's all good. We're actually moving from a 6th, so these aren't parallel fifths. We call these direct fifths, parallel motion to a perfect fifth from some different interval. It's not ideal, but as long as it's inner voices, meaning not soprano and bass, the harmony gods will give us a pass.
Whatever.
Going on to the 5-7 chord, the tenor and bass approach a unison on the root. Again, not a problem because it's contrary motion. And the alto and soprano have the tendency tones, fa and ti. So we have the most important tones of the chord, the root, the third, and the seventh. Notice that we're missing the D, the fifth of the chord, but remember, that's the one we can omit if necessary. Now, moving on toward the 1 chord, our leading tone, T, resolves to Do, but on the way it gets a little sidetracked. The B jogs down to A and back, before resolving, as it should, to C. This A is called a neighbor tone, and it's just an embellishment. It's another type of non-harmonic tone, and we call it a lower neighbor to the B. It's not part of the 5-7 harmony, it's just here to give the melody more shape. For more information on this and other non-chord tones, please see the counterpoint module. One last banana peel for you. Our 2 chord sounds even better if we add a 7th to it. Now this is pretty much the only place the tenor can move if we go to the plain old 2 chord. But if we leave the tenor on C, we now have a 2-7 chord, a minor 7th chord built on 2. By staying on C, the tenor has the 7th of the chord. This gets rid of the direct fifths we just saw and makes the 2 harmony more rich. Of course, now we need to change the rest of the tenor line so it makes sense. The only place that C can really go is up to D. Now we have the complete 5-7 chord and we're home free. Why don't we hit up Bach for another example, the prelude in C major. Even 2 centuries before we slip on the banana peel, we still have the same chord progression. 1, 2, 5, 1. But this time you can tell from the figured bass that we have an inversion of our 2 chord. And this is very common. Let's reduce the harmony to our familiar 4-voice chorale. Bach goes from the 1 chord to a 2-7, once again a minor 7th chord built on 2. But this D minor 7th chord has its 7th, C, in the bass. So this is our 2-7 chord in third inversion, 4-2 in figured bass. Notice how by using this inversion of our 2-7 chord, the bass voice doesn't have to change at all. It just stays on C while the upper voices move. Now, just like with the other examples, our 2 chord sets up the tendency tones for the 5-7 chord. The soprano already has Fa, and the bass has an easy step down from Do to T. There's our 5-7 chord, but with its third, B, in the bass, first inversion, or 5-6-5. So our 2-7 chord in third inversion really can't help but go to the 5-7 chord in first inversion, 2-4-2 resolving to 5-6-5. All that's left is the authentic cadence. You're also likely to find the 2 chord in first inversion. Beethoven has the 2 chord here with G in the bass, so that's first inversion, 2-6. This inversion is preferable when the melody has La, the 6th note of the scale. So that takes care of major keys. Now the 2 chord is plenty common in minor, but there's a catch. The 2 chord as a bare triad is diminished, and that can be a bit harsh. For that reason, in minor keys, 2 often appears as a 7th chord, half diminished. More plaintive, less harsh. Here's a great use of the 2-7 chord in minor, the Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem. Alright, we're in D minor, and the first 2 beats just have the upper 3 voices shifting notes within the 1 chord. Now the 2 chord, in E half diminished, will be in root position, so the bass moves up to E. That's the root of the 2 chord. Now we need the third, G, and the alto can step down for that. Next, the 5th, B flat, and our tenor grabs that one. You might think the tenor and bass have direct fifths now, but they don't. E up to B flat is a tritone, a diminished fifth. No rule against that. Finally, we need the seventh of our 2-7 chord, and the soprano's already there. All right, let's watch this 2 chord resolve to the dominant. Notice how the soprano on Do stepped down to get the leading tone, T, in the 5-7 chord, and the alto already had the other tendency tone, Fa. So once again, our 2 chord sets up the tendency tones for the 5-7 chord that follows. Okay, a little review. The 2 chord is most often seen as a preparation for 5, so don't go from 2 back to 1. Next, when going from 1 to 2, beware of parallel fifths, most often between the root and the fifth of each chord. Contrary motion is a great way to avoid parallel fifths, as is using inversions of 1 and 2. Then, keep careful track of your voice leading. The 2 chord sets up the tendency tones in the 5-7 chord that follows. And last, in minor keys, it's usually best to add a 7th to your 2 chord, for a 2 half diminished. This gives you a more plaintive sound and a better preparation for the 5 chord. And the 2-7 works just as well in major keys. Super job on the supertonic. Be sure to take advantage of the worksheets, which will help you write 2-5-1 harmony. You'll also be given a bass line with figured bass, and you'll come up with the upper 3 voices. Now in this video, we pretty much only looked at the 2 chord, but when you're ready, go ahead and watch Predominance Part 2, where we tackle
the 4 chord.
I'm Aron Bernstein. Go forth and harmonize.